Warsaw, Poland. Winter 1870. Inside a modest little apartment on Freda Street, a curious girl named Marie Skłodowska sits by the window. She is still a child, small, serious, her eyes full of curiosity. But already, there's something special about her. Marie was born into a family of teachers. Her father was a professor who taught physics and mathematics, and their home was filled with books, maps, and broken scientific instruments. While most children played with dolls or toy swords, little Marie played with glass beakers and magnets.
Papa, why does the compass needle always point north?
Because the Earth has a magnetic field.
Marie nodded seriously, even if she didn't fully understand yet. Life in Warsaw wasn't easy. Poland was under Russian rule, and the Russians were not kind to the Polish people, especially to those who wanted to learn. Polish history was banned, and speaking Polish at school was forbidden. And girls? To dream of becoming a scientist? That was out of the question. But Marie wasn't someone who accepted. No, very easily. She read every book she could find, sometimes late into the night under the light of a candle. She memorized formulas, learned French and Russian, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. By the age of 10, she had already lost her mother to tuberculosis and her eldest sister to typhus. But instead of giving in to sorrow, she grew stronger. When schools refused to teach science to girls, she joined a secret school, the Flying University. This underground school moved from house to house to avoid Russian surveillance, where brave women and men whispered forbidden knowledge to one another. A teenage girl walks quietly through the snowy streets of Warsaw. Her destination? A hidden physics lecture. Courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's simply the quiet steps of someone carrying a notebook beneath her coat. By her late teens, Marie had only one dream: to go to Paris, to study at the Sorbonne, to become a real scientist. She knew it would never be easy. She had no money, no connections, and the world wasn't ready to welcome a woman scientist. But Marie? She was ready to meet the world. Marie Skłodowska would one day be known as Marie Curie, the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and the only person to win it in both physics and chemistry. Every great scientist begins with a single question. Marie's first question? Maybe it was something this simple.
Why not me?
When Marie Skłodowska arrived in Paris by train, she was carrying two bags. One held clothes, the other, books. Physics books, math books, and a bag full of dreams. It was 1891. She was 24 years old. She had left her family, her hometown, and everything familiar from Poland. She was chasing the dream that most people said women shouldn't dream of. Marie enrolled at the Sorbonne, one of the world's most prestigious universities. And almost immediately, she began to struggle. The lectures were in French and incredibly fast French. The other students? They were mostly men, wealthier, and appeared more confident. And Marie? She could barely afford food. Some days, she survived on only bread and tea. And instead of turning on the heat, she wrapped herself in blankets to endure the cold. But she didn't stop. While others went to cafes, Marie stayed behind, continuing her studies. While others slept, she calculated, experimented, and memorized. She wasn't just trying to pass the courses. She was trying to prove that she deserved to be there. And what was the result? She didn't just pass. She graduated at the top of her class in physics. And the following year, she took second place in mathematics. In a world that said, "You can't," Marie answered with quiet genius, "Just watch me." And by chance, in the laboratory, she met Pierre Curie. He wasn't flashy, nor was he wealthy, but he was very much like her. Shy, brilliant, immersed in science, and sometimes forgetting about little things like lunch. Their first conversation was about crystals and magnetic fields. It wasn't a romantic candlelit dinner, but for the two scientists, that was love. Pierre quickly realized Marie was not just smart, she was extraordinary. He asked her to stay in France, to marry him, and to continue their experiments together. At first, Marie refused. She still dreamed of returning to Poland to teach. But when she was rejected by the University of Warsaw simply because she was a woman, Marie wrote Pierre a letter.
I will come back.
They married in 1895. There was no wedding dress, no gold ring. Just 2 bicycles and a lab to share. They rode through the French countryside on their honeymoon, talking about atoms, energy, and the many mysteries of the world still waiting to be uncovered. And in a small, humble shed, barely better than a barn, they started their greatest project. The discovery of invisible forces, radiation. From Paris's cold attic to a modest wedding, Marie's story was not about comfort. It was about conviction. She didn't wait for perfect conditions. With persistence, partnership, and an unwavering heart that never stopped asking. Why? She created her own future. She came to Paris with nothing but books and dreams. And there, she found love, purpose, and the person who would walk beside her as she changed the world. Together, they weren't just husband and wife. They were a scientific revolution. Just outside the edges of Paris, in a small, leaky shed, 2 scientists stood among piles of black ore, bubbling chemicals, and notebooks stacked sky high. And in the midst of it all was a woman the world barely knew. Her name was Marie Curie. She and her husband, Pierre, were chasing something invisible, a strange energy, coming from a dark, heavy mineral called pitchblende. Most scientists thought the rock was ordinary, but Marie noticed something different. The energy was too strong, too mysterious to ignore. So she asked the question that would change science forever.
What if there's something new inside this?
She crushed the rocks, mixed chemicals, and kept experimenting for months and months, with no heat, no gloves, and no help. And finally, in 1898, she discovered a brand new element. She named it polonium, in honor of her homeland Poland. Later that same year, she found another. It glowed. It was powerful. And it would change science forever. She called it radium. Marie Curie had uncovered a force the world had never seen before. She gave it a name, radioactivity. In 1903, Marie and Pierre, along with Henri Becquerel, were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics. But at first, Marie's name was left off the list. Because she was a woman, only Pierre's name appeared. So Pierre stood up and said,
"This prize belongs to her too. She is my equal."
And with that, they added Marie's name. She became the first woman ever to win a Nobel Prize. She could have stopped there, but the very next day, she went back to the lab. Same coat, same notebook, and that same bright light in her eyes. Because for Marie, it was never about the awards. It was about discovery. The belief that somewhere, hidden in what we can't see, might be the answers to everything. In 1906, Marie Curie's world changed in an instant. Her husband, Pierre, was crossing the street on a rainy day in Paris when he was struck by a carriage and killed instantly. They had worked together for years, studying strange new elements, tracing invisible energy, asking impossible questions. They were not just a married couple. They were scientific soulmates. People whispered,
"She won't be able to go on without him."
She was just his assistant.
but they didn't know Marie. A few weeks later, Marie walked into Pierre's old classroom and stood in his place. That day, Marie Curie became the first female professor at the Sorbonne, and she quietly kept going. She returned to the laboratory. She raised their daughters. She carried the weight of grief and discovery. Marie discovered that an element once thought unchangeable could become something entirely new. 5 years later, in 1911, Marie Curie won her second Nobel Prize. This time, in chemistry. It was not shared. There were no doubts. It was hers. For discovering polonium, for isolating radium, for proving that what we cannot see can still change everything. Marie Curie never chased awards. She chased truth. Even after loss and doubt, she chose to keep going. Because for Marie Curie, the greatest discovery wasn't just in science. It was the strength to continue, even when everything told her to stop. In 1914, the world was plunged into war. Bombs exploded and soldiers bled. Medicine couldn't keep up with the pace. while most scientists stayed in their labs at that time. Marie Curie, the woman who discovered radium and won the Nobel Prize twice, headed to the front lines. Not with weapons. She brought something far more powerful: knowledge. At the time, Marie was studying X-rays, a magical light that could see inside the human body. But near the battlefields, there were no X-ray machines in hospitals. Doctors had to diagnose wounded soldiers, with bullets lodged deep inside them, just by looking. So Marie had an idea.
Let's bring the machines to them.
She built mobile X-ray units, small traveling clinics powered by science and determination. People affectionately called these vehicles Little Curies. Marie taught herself how to operate them, trained nurses personally, and even taught her 17-year-old daughter, Irène Curie, to join her. Together, they went from battlefield to battlefield, locating bullets, shrapnel, and fractures, assisting surgeries, and saving lives. Countless soldiers were saved, not by weapons, but by light and a pair of caring hands. Marie Curie didn't wear a uniform. She didn't carry a gun, but she fought too, with science, courage, and a compassionate heart. At the time, many believed that women didn't belong in war or in science. But once again, she proved them wrong. Her legacy isn't just in chemistry textbooks or locked inside Nobel medals. It lives on in the countless lives she helped save. Because perhaps the most powerful weapon to bring to a battlefield is the light that heals others. She set out on a journey to face the world. She gave lectures, met presidents, raised funds for research, and inspired countless women and girls to dream. In America, she was welcomed like a hero. In India, Japan, and across Europe, she lit up stages and classrooms alike. But she always remained the same: quiet, focused, always speaking in a gentle whisper.
What could I learn next?
At the time, the dangers of radiation were not well understood. And after years of research in laboratories without protection, her body slowly began to fail. In 1934, Marie Curie passed away from aplastic anemia. There was no grand memorial, no lavish funeral, just a quiet farewell. The final moment of a woman who had once illuminated the world. But her story did not end there. Exactly 1 year later, her daughter, Irène Joliet Curie, together with her husband, received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, walking the same path as her mother. A legacy of women in science spanning 2 generations. Mother and daughter, side by side. 2 women, 2 Nobel laureates. Marie Curie showed us that science is not about fame. It's about asking questions and never giving up on the answers. What she discovered: she did not commercialize radium or file a patent for it. What she truly left behind was this belief:
Knowledge belongs to everyone.
And this philosophy has influenced today's standards of scientific ethics. Your likes and subs keep me going.